What's up, Henry?
Hey, what's going on, man?
I can't get you and Laura in the same place at the same time.
She's gone, I'm here.
I know. It's like secret identities. You're just shifting personas. She's back in Germany, right?
She's back in Germany. She doesn't go home much, but she's back home today.
They believe in Krampus over there.
Didn't Santa Claus originate over there?
I think so. And then Krampus is like the evil Santa Claus, who if you're a bad kid, he comes and takes all your toys. By the way, not a bad movie either. PG-13, not like rated R full of gore, but pretty good.
What was colon switches were involved in that?
Could have been. Colin Hanks. In today's episode, though, we are going to honor American shipper founder David Howard. We're going to talk about the logistics of Christmas. Far be it for any logistics parent, especially when you're putting all these gifts under the tree, to be like, God damn it, how does Santa Claus do all that? You know, like if your children are watching, right? But if there is a Santa Claus, how does he get all this stuff here? How many trucks does it take? How many boats? How many containers?
I always wondered that myself, man. Like, how many planes would it take?
We're going to break it down.
How many reindeer would it take, more specifically?
And then we'll go from spruce to trade truce. Talk about a little activity that's going on, the trade war. Break it down by the numbers a little bit. COSCO, they're doing something a little bit crazy. They're spending some big money on fleets. We're going to talk about mounting holiday returns, big deal that's a reverse supply chain, and also foreign trade zones. So we got it all. We got everything for you today.
Man, it's your all-in-one show right here.
Yeah. So. All right, logistics of Christmas. We tease. We're going to start out. Logistics of Santa Claus himself, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to figure this. 25% of the world population is children.
Wow.
Which equals to 1.8 billion children. But not all of them are Christian or secular celebrators, right?
Right.
So Santa already gets a little bit of a break there, but that still leaves roughly 600 million kids that are expecting toys under their Christmas tree.
Double the U.S. population, roughly.
Wow. Yeah, if you think about it, it's a lot of people. And then each kid, I didn't look into this. What the average, how many gifts on average do children get?
On average, I'd say 1 to 2.
Children get 2 gifts on average get 2 gifts for Christmas?
You would think. I mean, how big are the gifts, right?
I don't know. I got my kid a bunch of I hope he's not listening. I got a bunch of Star Wars stuff.
Oh, you think that's low?
Yeah, my wife started taking things out of it, out of the pile. She was like, that's too much stuff to give him.
Yeah, I was trying to be conservative on my estimates.
Okay. I guess if you, I don't know.
They tell me I over-exaggerate here. So
is that what you got for Christmas? 2 gifts? 1 gift?
I mean, no, man. But I mean, I'm just trying to think about everybody.
All right.
Trying to be all-inclusive, politically correct.
What was your best Christmas gift of all time?
Man, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
Man, I'm a big regular Nintendo fan.
Yeah.
Oh man,
dude, I was gonna pick video game things. It was Sega CD. It wasn't the best gift. It was I was the most excited for getting the Sega CD with Night Trap. It wasn't very good, but I was just it was finally you had full motion video in games. Exciting times to be alive. 1992.
It's pretty hilarious how sophisticated video games have gotten, and I just would rather play Mario.
Yeah, I mean, I have both sides because I have the kids now and they play in the Switch.
Yeah.
But we already have a lot of that stuff, so I can't get that for the kids. But fortunately, he's back in. The Mandalorian has brought him back into the Star Wars fold. But here it is. So if the average gift weighs 1 kilogram, Santa would have to ship 600 tons of presents across the globe.
And he must have some awesome ground handlers, right?
No, yes. Now if you were going out to bid on this freight, right? If you're going out to bid on Santa's freight, is that even a contract you want? Because think about all the assets you would have to put in place just for one time of the year, right? Just for this time of the year to put everything in place for overnight shipping. Probably not the best use of funds.
Man, it depends, It's time sensitive.
Yeah.
High value. Must be there on time. I mean, that equals big money. How much is Santa paying?
I think he just plays in candy canes and hot chocolate.
Look at me, I'm going in and analyzing what's Santa's revenue? How much he could yeah.
Well, let's think about it. If Santa used human help, he would need approximately 400,000 trucks. That would fix the capacity crisis for one day.
Man.
5,000 Boeing 757-200 airplanes. 5,000.
That's nuts.
You look at all these things, like the boats on the water, the planes in the sky. How many planes, cargo planes, are in the sky at any given time?
Oh man, thousands.
So close to 5,000.
Man, that's a good true freighters.
Yeah.
Big, the largest of the freighters. I would say, yeah, man.
All right.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Hey, we can go into Sonar and look.
We could go into Sonar and look. Santa, he also is, like we mentioned, he only has one night to make children happy and deliver these presents. So which means he has to deliver 500,000 gifts per minute with no room for fail. No room for fail at all. So take that, Amazon.
Can you even see Santa? He's just like,
he would have to be moving so fast.
Yeah.
You know they're making a Sonic the Hedgehog movie? It looks terrible.
that's why like the cookies are always like half eaten. He's just like
Yeah.
snagging bites, just making it look like he was there.
Speaking of Christmas and speaking of our sponsor, Bloom Global. You want Bloom Global in your stocking this year? I sure do. Prevent and correct shipment exceptions before they become a problem. Bloom Global flags exceptions within an organization's supply chain, alerting users to unexpected changes, on-time, late, or early product arrivals, and predicts behaviors based on decades of historical data. These insights create a competitive advantage to those managing complex, multimodal global supply chains. Bloom leverages 25 years of data insights. That's a quarter century. A quarter century of data insights in its globally connected network, open digital platform, and unsurpassed supply chain visibility to provide logistics execution and optimization across complex networks. It's a mouthful. Learn more at bloomglobal.com. They can probably say it better than I did.
Shout out to Bloom Global. Gotta love them. So here's what's been happening.
What did they get? What did Bloom get? Bloom just had a big deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love those guys. So Dooner, here's what's been happening around the globe.
All right. So this is kind of a sad story. This is let's honor someone here. So David A. Howard, he was the founder of Our Affair magazine. Well, it was a magazine, was a print journal, all of those things. And actually for a while on the web, it was like a digital magazine.
Yeah.
Once we bought them, we did away with that. But for a while, they sort of took that magazine template and wanted to make it work in a digital world. And whether it did or didn't, I mean, some people will agree or disagree. But I was always a big American Shipper fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No paywall. Big fan.
Yeah, well, and he introduced the shipper's world to the emerging container carrier industry during the early 1970s. He died on December 15th at his home in Jacksonville, Florida. He was 99 years old. Joseph Bonney, he was on What the Truck earlier. We talked to him on Monday, and he's a former managing editor of American Shipper. He said Howard was among the first to recognize that changes in regulation and technology were changing the way that shippers operated, and that transportation was only just one link in a company's supply chain. He was covering logistics in detail when other publications and even many in the industry were still learning how to spell it.
Man, such an amazing guy. Howard was born February 14th, 1920.
Valentine's Day.
In my home state, Nashville, North Carolina, and raised in nearby Black Creek, where both of his parents were educators. He graduated second in his high school, class of 1936, from Chapel Hill.
Smart guy.
Super smart guy.
In 1951, he was encouraged to start a port magazine, though, in Jacksonville. He formed Howard Publications, and the first issue of the Jacksonville Seafarer was published in January 1952. He then launched the statewide maritime and trade publication, Florida Journal of Commerce. That's the FJOC. FJOC in 1959. He received numerous industry awards, very well decorated, recognized guy over the years, including the U.S. Propeller Club Man of the Year. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not.
He received a Lifetime Achievement Honor by the Containerization and Intermodal Institute, and in 2000 was inducted into the Maritime Hall of Fame. All these awards were in honor of his editorial contributions to the development of maritime history. I think that he also has one of those McLean Awards, right? The Malcolm McLean, the guy who invented the shipping container, the modern shipping container.
He was on the cutting edge of it, man.
Yeah, he was. And you know what? Once he stepped down he became editor emeritus of American Shipper in 2000 at the age of 80, and he kept on with it almost until the sale here with FreightWaves, where he finally took a back seat. And I think, he had a few health issues, and that wasn't that long ago. That was in July.
Yeah, special publication, man. I had the pleasure of going down there before the sale, and it's just amazing to see the record. According to Alphaliner, the December 13th Phase 1 truce between the two nations is unlikely to provide a near-term uplift. The December 13th deal saw the suspension of planned 15% U.S. tariffs on $160 billion of imports from China that were set to take effect on December 15th. The U.S. also pledged that existing 15% tariffs on $112 billion of goods that took effect on September 1st would be reduced to 7.5%. For its part, China canceled retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports, and the country is expected to increase purchases of U.S. products and services by some $200 billion over the next 2 years. That's interesting because, they're supposed to increase their purchase of agricultural goods
Yeah.
to 40 billion, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are skeptical because that's basically having to double the amount that they purchased 2 or 3 years ago.
You think it's going to happen? Because as Alphaliner notes, the 25% tariff imposed by the U.S. on some $250 billion of imports remains unchanged. Rolf Haben-Jansen, he's the chief executive officer of shipping container giant Hapag-Lloyd. He told FreightWaves that as a result of the U.S.-China trade war, volumes from China to the U.S. Have been way down. But markets like Vietnam, Indonesia, and especially India for the U.S. have been developing very well. And we covered that before because there's a lot of transshipping going on and stuff too. It might be whitewashing some country of origin. Some people might also be shifting where the goods are coming from, but it's definitely had a major impact. But what they're also saying is that because of this major shift, it's not going to immediately contract and go back to China because people have already moved on.
Exactly. That's why Q1 and Q2 will be very telling. I think it's all going to materialize here in the next few months.
Some number from peers, Alphaliner estimates that U.S. containerized imports from China decreased by 8.2% in the first 11 months of the year, and China's share of total imports from the Far East shrunk by 69% last year to 64% this year. Pretty decent dent.
That's a huge dent.
All right, so we hear about this, and now this makes this story even more bizarre, is that COSCO is planning a near $2 billion ship order spending spree. Surprise you?
Yes and no. No, because it's a state-owned, state-owned enterprise, right? So the Chinese government, the huge foreign currency reserves, you're seeing China's ability to spend, right?
Yeah. Got to keep those yards to work, right?
At the same time, it's very surprising because of potential overcapacity in the market being very, you could see somebody head towards financial troubles here soon.
Well, here's what it looks like. According to Splash, COSCO is in advanced negotiations with yards in China for 8 15,000 TEU ships and 8 23,000 TEU vessels, which is pretty amazing because ever since the Panama Canal expansion, we started to see these SLUVs, the super vessels. But before, back in the day, 15,000 was a huge ship.
Yeah.
And now this is like the baby to the 23,000 container ship.
That's what's amazing is the American shipper, made it from, the beginning to all the way to these massive ships.
Yeah, well, it's going to cost the world's third largest container line, get this, $1.8 billion, but it'll add 304,000 extra slots to their fleet. But is that necessarily a good thing?
It's curious timing, as at the same time, European liners are drawing back orders, canceling orders, or just outright don't have any ship orders planned.
Where do you see it going?
Man, it's going to be really interesting. I have a bad feeling about Q1 and Q2 in terms of volume. Going to be massive overcapacity in the market. You can see a lot of blank sailings, and I think the carriers are going to be struggling to find containers to fill the boats.
You did the drayage report. Are we seeing this at the harbors? Are we seeing this on the truck pickup side?
Well, the last couple of weeks have brought with them the December 15th expected tariffs, right?
Yeah.
Now that those have been canceled, a lot of that freight, in my opinion, is here. Much like last year, right? We had this downturn in May of 2019 from the prior year's volumes. I think you're going to see about the same thing. There was almost another peak season in Los Angeles. So truck wait times for drayage carriers went up. So people were asking me, are you seeing this in the numbers? And sure enough, you were.
How are wait times doing in LA? Because I heard that with the Pier Pass, the appointment system they've been doing has mitigated a lot of that traffic, but is that showing up in the numbers?
Yeah, it depends on how you define it, right? Is it truck turn times, or is it the time they go in the gate and then back out the gate, or is it the time they're sitting there overall? Overall wait times have increased during this peak season, especially in the last 2 weeks to month. But I think overall, on average, they're doing better.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least mitigating the traffic, right? There's just not as many trucks waiting, even though the trucks may, on average, be waiting a bit more. At times they didn't.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Is that worthy of a ship horn?
Yep.
Give that full ship horn. Okay. So when we talk about the holidays, that means people are buying a lot of goods, which is good for the economy and everything. But one thing that people have become more cognizant ones, and we're starting to see more and more reports coming from more and more media outlets and locations. And one of them was a great video I saw on CNBC, which was kind of talking about the reverse logistics and the waste that happens in both food and returns. So I think we're going to focus in on that a little bit and talk a little bit about what was once wasted. Let's talk about food first, because that's an interesting space. Because you think about something that's perishable, there's only so much time that someone can consume it. But on the other hand, it's hard to just to give somebody some food, right? Like
Right.
there's a I don't know, maybe a grossness factor.
Well, especially a piece of food that maybe doesn't look so great. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're so used to expecting like the best looking vegetables, fruits. Yeah, I mean this plays into that, right?
Yeah, well, and then that is the first approach here: is the produce that does not meet aesthetic standards, which was required by food retailers. And they then sell produce at a discount. Now, there's been discount supermarkets that have been doing this for a long time. They're more than happy to take, like the deformed apples or just whatever it doesn't look perfect. By the way, like the best looking apple isn't necessarily the best tasting one. Like look like a red delicious.
Yeah.
That's like designed just for look, but like that's the worst tasting apple you can get.
Man, if you could hop over the mountains in Asheville, North Carolina, man, the apples don't look like they do in the supermarkets. They look much different.
Are they juicy though? You bite into?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, this approach, though, of moving the non-aesthetic good produce is starting to move into startups. They're picking up. Everything goes digital until, I guess, the money runs out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a company called Misfits Market, Imperfect Foods, and Bad Apple Produce. Some of these startups have even received financing from venture capitalists. For example, according to Crunchbase, Full Harvest is another startup that is implementing this business model. It's raised over $11.5 million in 3 rounds since 2017. The most recent round was of $8.5 million in a Series E in August 2018.
I like this business model actually.
You do?
I don't know about the name Bad Apple Produce.
Yeah.
No offense to those guys, but I do. I think it's a huge area where we waste a lot.
I think this is a very clever approach they're taking too. So, this is taking food and produce byproducts that would have gone to waste and turning them into new food. So, in basically recycling food in ways that are not disgusting or
Right.
And what they're doing is one of them is Rise, where they turn spent grains from breweries and they're making like this super flour that's incredibly high in fiber and in protein. Would you be interested?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think it's time where we kind of take a step back and think about the logistics involved in all this, right? Like the waste. We got to stop wasting so much food. And I think this, a lot of the best tasting juice. Have you ever been down to Maple Street? Like that, right on the orange juice maker, it says clearly the best, the best looking oranges don't make the best juice. It's the bad one. So like, I think this is already happening kind of with juice where we become accustomed to drinking all that. I think you just kind of get it out of your head, realize, it's not going to contain necessarily anything that's harmful. It's just going to it's not going to look so great, right?
It's like with golden retrievers. Like the better looking one you get, the more likely it is to have like hip problems and stuff.
Man, those are, I have 2 golden retrievers, man.
Yeah.
Don't say that. No.
Do they have hip problems? I grew up with a golden retriever.
Well, it's all got to do with genes, right? Like I think my father-in-law was brilliant, and the 2 that he bred together were so different. So they're actually very unique. Like people always say, like, "Oh my God, those dogs look so different. They look so beautiful. Their coats are so beautiful." And I think it's because they have such distant relatives, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what happens in some of the more cosmetic race to do them. There's a little bit of inbreeding that goes on. It causes skeletal issues and deformities. Does your dad's a dog breeder?
Well, it's my father-in-law. He's
Okay.
a big duck hunter. He uses golden retrievers for duck hunting, believe it or not. And he had a couple of litters, and it's so funny, man, because all of them have great homes.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you think about, I'm sure there's dog breeders out there, but, that could be doing it the wrong way, right? But he certainly did it the right way. And we're always, my wife's always showing me pictures on like Instagram of all these dogs and these great homes. And actually one of the guys, our sales guys, Logan, he has the brother of my dogs.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Keeping it all in the family, all within the FreightWaves American Shipper family. All these dogs.
It kind of flips people out when we say that.
So wait a second. So why a golden retriever over like a black lab or like a Chesapeake Bay retriever?
Family dog.
Oh,
More of
okay.
a family dog.
Yeah.
They're the sweetest.
I have a
dogs.
lab. They're family dogs.
Oh yeah, they can be too. But
All
I think some of them tend to be a little bit more aggressive. He just really has always loved Goldens.
Little ball obsessed.
It's a family thing.
So the other company, the other one is Rind Snacks, and they're doing something that they turn the bad fruit into edible fruit rinds. So we've all had like freeze-dried fruit, but now they're taking the rinds and the peels, freeze-drying them, eating them. Tasty?
Not a huge fan
Sounds
of
chewy.
freeze-dried.
Yeah.
Man, I'll eat anything, right? I mean, like, but I would prefer not to.
Yeah. Well, here's where we're going to guilt trip everybody going into the holiday season.
Yeah, right.
Because this is return science, and some of these numbers are pretty. When you saw some of these facts, where you're like, wow, I didn't realize where we were at in the return cycle in terms of the amount of waste. Because when you think about it, it seems so low impact at the time. You get something from Amazon, it doesn't work, it doesn't fit, it was whatever it may be, and then you send it back, and you think that that's the end of it.
Yeah, it's got to be like the most waste created from like the best intentions in terms of like what you were trying to do.
Yeah.
People are trying to give you a great gift, and sometimes grandma doesn't always know what clothes you like to wear, right?
Yeah. Well, it's costly. So we'll get into some of the facts and figures here, but returns, it's costly in a lot of ways, not just to the environment, but also to retailers. But returns account for 5 billion tons of waste and 15 million metric tons of CO2. Greta Thunberg, throw your Christmas list away, right?
It's pretty amazing statistics there.
Well, the returns, though, the waste from all of the returns that we're getting, we were talking about all of Santa's gifts, and they were going to fit in 5,000 Boeings. So all the returns would be in 5,600 Boeings. So more than all of the Christmas gifts given to children is comprised of the returns that we see, and the trash is equal to 5 million Americans waste in an entire year, according to CNBC. Just from returns.
You should see how many cardboard boxes are at my house right now.
How many? Too many?
Man, like part of my garage is full because we just moved recently too, man. It's just like somebody's got to figure that out. There's a huge opportunity there.
Well, Oracle did a report on this. They published it in September, and it said that 77% of consumers said they anticipate returning some of the gifts that they would receive this holiday season, and 20% of those plan to return at least half of the gifts they receive. Like, that's a kind of a negative outlook on just get like that. I plan on return. Nobody knows what to get me.
Man, speaking of in-laws, you know what they do?
What?
They make you make a Christmas list, and you get everything that you want.
Yeah.
It kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it, right?
Because it's exactly what you asked for.
I like giving gifts. I'm a gift giver. I mean, I feel like I give thoughtful gifts. But,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of waste, like, that's the way to do it, right? There's no gifts wasted.
I guess gift cards like would potentially be but then someone can still go on Amazon and they can buy the wrong thing and they return it because as we'll see, online returns aren't much better. But here's, according to research by Apprise, retailers lost $6.5 billion due to return fraud during last holiday season. So that's when you get something or you already broke some piece of crap that you have. You broken PlayStation 4 or 5. What are they on? Are they on 5 now?
You buy, like, yeah, I think so.
Well, so people are buying it, though, and they're putting something else, a brick in the box. They're putting whatever it may be.
That's
So
what I thought.
return fraud is a big deal. Or they're buying, like, the real Ray-Bans, and they're putting the fake Ray-Bans back in there,
Yeah.
sending those ones back.
What do you consider fraud if you bought a shirt, wore it, and then returned it?
No, I think that's all right. But I think if
Oh.
you bought, like a Hanes shirt and then returned, like,
Oh, wow.
like
They're
some
just like-
off-brand one instead,
You're just putting another shirt in the box?
putting another shirt in the box, yeah.
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Good movie. 7. Okay. But get this. So they were studying it, and Amazon doesn't give out details on all of this stuff, but a single Amazon facility sent back 293,000 items to a garbage dump in just 9 months. So that's out of one facility.
I'd love to see that amount of truckloads.
Well, the reason why they're doing it is that, in addition, many of the goods that are returned have already exhausted their margin. It is no longer cost effective for them to inspect, repackage, and sell them, so retailers destroy the goods.
That is
Now it's just
insane.
taking up space. Now it's just a problem.
I'd love to think like where are those things going? I'd love to, be a part of reselling those, but I don't know where those things go. I mean, where do they go?
Well, they used to go to China, but then China had their golden sword policy where if something's labeled trash, they're not taking it anymore, right?
Right.
So that creates a big problem.
Right.
And now the problem is that there's such a glut of stuff that I don't think it's like, because people always go like, why don't you just give this to a bunch of homeless people or give it to a homeless shelter? But who does that? Who distributes it? I mean, businesses like, if you go in your boss's office after this podcast is over and go suggest something that won't make them money or save them money, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
See how far that gets.
Oh, yeah. Not very far.
Well, UPS said it anticipates handling more than 1 million return packages every day this holiday season, reaching a peak of 1.9 million items on January 2nd. So after New Year's, everyone's just, once that hangover wears off, like, I really don't need half those T-shirts I bought on Amazon. I don't need a Chewbacca tank top with his hair blowing in the wind. Yeah. Well, retailers are trying to find ways to cope with $50 billion in profits are left on the table between destroyed goods, between these returns. They're losing a lot of money.
That's a ton of money.
Yeah. The value of returned online orders this holiday season also forecast to total as much as $41.6 billion.
Man, this is an interesting topic, man. I feel like there's some opportunity here somewhere, some way.
Where do you think it fits? Because if it's sort of like a byproduct of these race to low margins to be competitive online, and it's clearly the Amazon effect because Before it used to be a real pita to return anything. It was
Sure.
just like it's going to take weeks. They're not going to refund it. And now, like Amazon,
Right.
if you go and you print the label out, they will refund you before they
Mhm.
even get the good back. And then
Right.
if they don't, because we sent back I think my kids were going to like a communion or something, and they had to get these little suits,
Mhm.
and one of them didn't fit, so my wife sent it back, and they refunded her. But then they charged us again because for some reason Amazon never got the box back. We
Oh.
don't have it, and that was a hard fight to get that money from Amazon.
We
They're
can-
usually really good.
They are usually really good. I feel like there is, you bring up a good point. There is some inefficiency in like keeping it, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to be hard to return. Now it's easy to return. We just got to figure out where it goes afterwards, right? Finding a new home potentially.
Well, what do you think that is, though? So you said there seems to be some kind of opportunity here.
Yeah.
Is there? Because, like, if you think about it good, right? So it comes in from China, and then it goes into a warehouse distribution center, and it probably goes to someone before it goes to Amazon, unless it's drop shipped there.
Mhm.
Then it's sold, and then whatever inventory they can't sell is liquidated, and then it goes down the chain from like the liquidation stores. You got your
Mhm.
Kohl's of the world. Then from
Right.
there it goes to the dollar store. But then if the dollar store can't sell it, it's the trash heap. What's next?
Man, I don't know. Like, do you figure out something else to make out of the materials? I mean, you bring up a good point too. It's not an easy thing to solve. It's super complex because again, like you say, there's already those. I guess you could call them bottom feeders for a lack of a better term, but
Yeah.
there already are those stores like those big liquidation lots where you can buy a big box of Amazon throwaways, and I think people sell a lot of that stuff on eBay, but even still, if they don't sell it, it probably just goes in the trash, right? So,
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Amazon, and they have been they've been figuring out a few ways to combat this. One of these is Amazon warehouse deals, which
mhm.
I love because sometimes it'll be a really good value. Like, there's a sound system I wanted to buy, and it was like $350 brand new, but it was like
Mhm.
$197,
Right.
and it was like very good condition, just opened.
Right.
Ordered, and it came perfectly fine. It was nice.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like there's certainly some margin in there, right? Like if it's high value items like that, I mean,
Yeah.
finding a deal, reselling it, but then you get into the trouble of like there's so much labor involved in getting something, finding something, and then being able to mark that up. I tried eBay for a minute, and it wasn't easy, man. I made some money, but it wasn't easy.
The other thing that Amazon is doing is they're allowing retailers to have their goods donated. So if they sit in inventory for too long, instead of it being shipped back to them at their cost, Amazon can donate it to a variety of charities of their choice. But the problem is that, like, when you think of these numbers of goods, this 5,600 Boeings worth of returns, at a certain point, like, that becomes critical mass is hit at these donation places. Because then what do?
Exactly. I always thought like all these people bringing all this stuff into Goodwill, like, I mean, where's it all going? I know
Yeah.
it can't all be hitting the shelves, right? Like they're only putting stuff on the shelves that ultimately they feel like they can actually
Oh, yeah.
turn.
Because people turn in all sorts of garbage. Like, they're things that can't even be resold that aren't even worth the shelf space at Goodwill,
Right.
which is tough.
Which means there may not be a home. I don't know.
There may not. Like, it's like the island of misfit toys. That's what you're going
Full
for.
circle.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
kids are still afraid of the snow monster. They're 5 and 3.
Man,
That one.
I told my wife that. I said, did that not ever scare you when you were younger? You talking about the abominable snowman?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if like I told my kids just to look at his eyes because like they're really silly, and then they got it.
Yeah,
And
don't
then-
look at his teeth. It's his teeth that are like.
Yeah, they became like their own Yukon Cornelius, and they were no longer as scared of the abominable snowman. But so the other thing you mentioned was
Classic.
recycling. But the problem with recycling, and Laura and I were talking about this, was the documentary Broken on Netflix, and there are mini documentaries, and one of them is on the recycling sham and how a lot of recycling just ends up in landfills anyway because people either they throw the wrong goods in the wrong bin. That's a big one because people will just take any old plastic or metal or glass and they'll throw it all in the same bin, and then it gets to the sorting place and there's nothing they can do with it. It goes right back in the trash.
Right.
But then there's also government programs that are paid for that those people never bother to recycle it. They just throw it in the trash as well.
Right.
Then there's just goods that can't be recycled for a number of reasons. One of them is because they're high value goods and people want to control their supply chain. We face this a lot in duty drawback where people do destructions of goods. So if you are a high-end shoe or a high-end handbag company, you may not want your goods to end up at the dollar store or to end up at Kohl's because that diminishes the label on there. Or another one is cologne. Cologne is a big one as well. Yeah.
You ever got some bad knockoff cologne, man?
Makeup as well. Makeup too. Like those big high-end ones where, and they had that great makeup episode. But you were telling me with the high-end when you're spraying it on yourself and
Oh man.
give you a rash.
Oh man, sandalwood.
Yeah.
if you, oh man, watch out.
Watch out for the fake sandalwood.
My wife works at the hospital. She said one of her doctors got some sandalwood on his face, and literally the same thing happened. His face just blew up almost instantly. It's nuts.
Wow. So that creates a big issue there, right? So
Huge issue.
there's the recycling issue, then there's the business aspect where if you destroy the goods, you can get 99% of your tariffs back. And you're also controlling the supply chain. And one handbag manufacturer I worked for, they would have their claims, they would do quarterly ones, and the claims were for over $250,000 per claim because they're getting hit with they already hit with 25% tariffs, so they don't care about all this trade war nonsense because stuff like leather and some of those gems are already hit pretty high.
Right.
And you'd be surprised at the invoice value on some of those goods. So you go to a store and like that handbag is $10,000. It's not like it costs $10. Like it's still IVs. The invoice value on it is still like $3,400 to $6,000. I mean, the margin's like double or triple, but it's not like $10 versus $10,000.
You know what's interesting is the intellectual property, right? Like a lot of this trade war arguably could be about the intellectual property. And I would argue that no one is ripped off more, or this whole conversation's about probably more than those guys in terms of like actual, goods that are, like apparel, right?
Yeah.
Like, those guys, I mean, it's a big problem. We talked about it the other day. I mean, it's the polo shirts, the Louis Vuittons. I mean, I've been to those places in China, and there are literally floors and floors in malls that have all knockoff goods. I forgot to bring your Jordans, by the way, but I saw them.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring them.
Oh, wow. So I think one of the problems with that, too, when you're talking about the glut of counterfeit goods that come in, they're not as controlled as they would be by a Nike or a Reebok or a Gucci. Because Gucci, they want to make sure that their goods are at least destroyed, disposed of, or sent out of the country, where when it's a fake polo shirt, if it can't sell at the flea market or at the, on the rug you're throwing out on the side of the street, those are going to end up in a dumpster or a landfill or burned or wherever they may be.
Man, the guy cleaning up the ocean, there's a big company, working on cleaning up the size of trash in the ocean. It's like double the size of Texas, right? He brought up a good point. He's going to take that and he's going to try to make something like, shoes, or, I mean, they're going to try to make something out of all this plastic, all this trash, right?
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't we just continue to actually like recycle in some form or fashion? I mean, if you're talking about giving incentives to somebody, it may make sense to give incentives to the guys who are recycling all this trash.
Well, let's bring this back. Let's bring it to the people listening at home, the millions of people listening at home. So this holiday season, what can they do, though? Like, what can they do to make even the smallest impact? Is that to wear those ugly socks that your grandmother-in-law got you? Like, what do you do?
Man, I think you do like my in-laws do, man. I was so surprised. They literally make you make out a Christmas list. I mean, my mother-in-law's like, is your Christmas list here? Christmas list here? So not only are they buying their goods when they're cheapest, right?
Yeah.
Like on your Black Fridays, your Cyber Mondays, whatever, you're also getting everything that you want, right? So like you start the new year with a whole new set of goods that you actually wanted.
Yeah.
There's no trash. The only trash is like the boxes and everything, which I would still argue is a bit of an issue. But there's no waste involved in that, right? So you think about all the time not spent sending stuff back, going to the store to return it. You would think like that's more efficient than anything else, right?
I think packaging could get a lot smarter. You bring up a good point in terms of the boxes and all that. Like every time, like I get my kids something from the store, like I got them this big Sven, and like I don't know what you do because it was in a box inside of another box, and then it has all of the foam around it and all the plastic, and then when you're like, wow, this is just a lot of junk. And then I bring it down to, in my building, we have like the stock room where all the recycles go, and it's like every TV box. Was it you who said you got the 65-inch TV? No, that was Anthony. That was Anthony. So he got a 65. If you've ever bought like a giant TV, though,
oh yeah,
like it looks fine when it's up in the store, but like when you try and put that box in your car, it's massive.
Oh yeah. Everybody's hit that dilemma. I definitely, in the old Camry, I call it the Cam Dog. Couldn't quite fit a 65-incher in there.
Did you put it on like the roof like a Christmas tree? Just tie it down?
I tried so hard, man.
Like the mattress?
I thought about tying it. If I'd had a rope, absolutely, man. I'm not afraid.
So I guess short of small, the one takeaway I guess you can get from this is this holiday season, if you're thinking of returning something and you don't want it, I guess the lowest impact way would be for you to do the final mile of taking it to a donation shop.
Everybody should be okay with
right.
Everybody should be okay with gift cards too, in my opinion, right? Like,
I guess, but like that's so soulless. Like if you just got all gift cards, it just feels that way.
It does. It does.
No.
It does.
I know. I like getting those gifts. I like even if it's a bad gift. Sometimes it's funny.
That's what my in-laws say. No gift cards. That's their one stipulation.
The problem is too, like if you just give me a bunch of Amazon gift cards, I'm probably just going to buy a lot of stuff that like I need. Or like the nice thing about a gift is you're getting something you would never really buy for yourself, but you're kind of secretly hoping someone would get for you.
Yeah, and it keeps you from if you get a gift card, you're kind of like open to buying whatever, which could be an issue. Like if your in-laws are buying it, you're probably not going to get something like super sketchy or super like outside the norm.
Yeah.
Like I've been eyeing these little like $35 computers, those Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
What are you gonna do with it?
Man, you can like create like an old Nintendo out of those things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an NES Classic, but it's really basically just a Raspberry Pi inside, and you can. Not that I would ever do this, but you could easily hack it and put whatever games you want on there, including like Super Nintendo and Genesis and arcade games. Put Rampage on there, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game.
There's like websites dedicated to the projects involved in those Raspberry Pis. You wouldn't believe, like people are creating like automatic lawnmowers that drive themselves, and the opportunity is like endless with those things. It's just nuts. It interests me.
So we were talking about some of those high value items that, for example, get destroyed in drawback. Something that a lot of companies use that bring in those items is something called a foreign trade zone. You familiar with those at all? Have you ever used a foreign trade zone? Did you do foreign trade zone entries? Because usually they have a person dedicated to that because it's a completely different filing process than how you do a regular entry into commerce.
Yeah, the company I worked for before I came to FreightWaves had helped set up a foreign trade zone for Komatsu.
So a lot of people mistakenly call them free trade zones too, or but most of you probably know it as an FTZ. The FTZs, they are used as a form to, how I've seen them used mostly, because there's a number of ways that they're used, but I've seen them used to avoid having to pay tariffs. So you can keep cash flow liquid, and then you don't pay tariffs until the goods are brought into U.S. commerce, similar to how you may use a bonded warehouse. Now, do you know what the biggest difference is between a bonded warehouse and a free trade zone, and why you would use one versus the other?
I would imagine it's got to do with finished goods.
Yeah.
Like I think if you're using a bonded warehouse most of the time, that's not being manufactured into something else. Like a foreign trade zone is normally in the assembly of goods, right? You bring in raw materials, manufacture something, then you send it for export. Bonded warehouse, I think, is almost like for re-export almost immediately.
You see that in automotive a lot. So I used to have an automotive client. They would bring in cars, and then when they wanted to bring them up to Canada, so they put them in the free trade zone, and they would switch out the dashboards to kilometers. So you were changing it. You were changing that component just enough. There's a bunch of different regulations that go into it, but transforming a good is one of the ways that you can avoid having to pay tariffs on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We bring this up. It's almost like the same concept, right? Of not devaluing goods, right? It's like it's a protectionist thing, right? You're trying to protect the values of all these different products.
Well, there's an article too on American Shipper, and if you go there, it's talking sort of. They kind of tied it around DHL, right? And how different cabotage laws played into effect, and how moving goods around free trade zones became just necessary to move airplanes around in commerce. So everything that was coming, if a plane from Europe was coming here and touching down the United States and going someplace else, they didn't have to enter into U.S. commerce, even though it was flying right out of the country. And then do something like so. FTZs you see FTZs at airports and locations like that.
Yeah, I mean, essentially they're a port, right?
Yeah, and they have their own port code.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. UN low codes, baby. Gotta love them.
Yeah. Under the bilateral and multilateral free trade agreements, by contrast, tariffs are systematically eliminated, and items would typically enter the U.S. economy duty-free. So it's talking about how these are designated spaces, and they're places that you can put their goods in. FTZs are useful in a variety of ways. One of them is, like we said, if you don't wish to ultimately export goods, but you want to defer paying on tariffs. That's a great way to do it. But also, if you just have to have it lay over in the United States for a bit and then fly it back out. And then the third way you mentioned is if you have to transform the good into something else.
Yeah, man, it's kind of a hidden piece of the supply chain in a lot of ways. I bet not many people know that. There's one just right down the road here.
Oh yeah, where's it located?
Well, it's just Komatsu, Signal Mountain. That's the road I get off on every day.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's the FTZ?
Yep.
We should go over there. Do a live broadcast from the free trade zone.
Live port report from the FTZ.
Yeah.
Downtown Chattanooga. No, it's not downtown.
Is there a lot of security there?
I imagine there's decent security there. Yeah, man.
Henry, what is going on in sonar?
Man, battling the beast that is the international ocean data.
Yeah.
Unbelievably massive, unbelievably frequent, not necessarily so complex, but just everything, man. It's it's so hard to piece together, and make sure it's all clean, because then you may have like a new supplier pop on board, and all of a sudden like things are getting spelled a different way than you've ever seen before. There's just things like that, man. So we're using machine learning to really kind of deduce all that, break it down, make sure that it is what it is. That's definitely one of the hardest things. But we've been getting a great reception, I'd say. People have been telling me that it's been blowing their minds in a lot of cases, but I guess that's a good thing. Hopefully.
So where have you been? So you have been out and you've been doing a lot of presentations on sonar.
Mhm.
What are people asking? What are they taking away from it? What is the general vibe you're getting? You're in a lot of different rooms. So
Sure.
tell me a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, I think what you and I know, Laura knows. I think is in decently high demand right now. Especially when it comes to data, right? Everybody is interested in what data can they get their hands on. Much like people used to look at the stock market, like what's your edge, right, in the
Yeah.
marketplace. So depending on the shipper, if it's a carrier, depending on who we're going to see, but everyone's interested in like how to get better about predicting where things are headed. I think people don't want to get caught off guard, so it's really a way of de-risking. So it's how can you give me actionable insights, actionable data that can help me just prepare for the future, and whether that's take advantage of a uptick in volume in a certain place, or it's to prepare for a downturn like a Q1, Q2. Because the people who aren't looking at that are going to get caught off guard. There's no doubt about it.
Where are the freight flows going? I know when we talk about box, we've been hearing about how the East Coast is
Mhm.
starting to become relatively dominant. But what is the data saying about all that?
Well, the West Coast still
Yeah.
dominates overall. But yeah, I'd say you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you mentioned the manufacturers moving out of China,
Yeah.
different places in Southeast Asia, India, surprisingly for somewhere like Savannah, the port of Mundra, Nava Shiva, is really one of the up and comers in terms of its ports of origin that are headed to that port. I mean, Savannah services more of those Indomex services, which are your it's just you know creative way of saying your it's kind of like American Express, like Amex.
Yeah.
It's Indomex, so it's India to America. All those services, and then you're seeing a lot of that going to New York as well. And I think the New York has the existing infrastructure from a rail perspective to service major inland points like Chicago, Columbus, and Cleveland. And those of all the lanes that comprise the most volume in the United States from a containerized rail volume perspective. New York to those three markets are the largest up and comers.
A lot of there's recently a meeting. There's a meeting by a group who is appalled by the traffic going on in New York, New Jersey, which I think hit an all-time low of 7 miles per hour is the
Oh
average
wow.
speed through there. So containerized freight not only is it expensive going across the bridges in New York and bringing in there and time-consuming and all that, but it's slow.
Yeah, man, you bring up a great point. Think about, I mean, the population density, right? Like our rate predictive engine that we have in Sonar right now. I mean, it's one of the many factors, right? Like if you're not taking it into account population density, you can't, you can't correctly, analyze rates, right? Because you're going to be going slower. There's a higher cost associated with that traffic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of nuts, man. So you have this great infrastructure, this great throughput capacity, and now we're being burdened by. So I think that also plays into the fact like okay, maybe Cleveland and Columbus, these places that I think overall people would say they're in decline, maybe like Detroit, now maybe becoming more maybe advantageous to put your facilities there, right?
Yeah, it's becoming attractive, cheaper cost per square foot.
Until Savannah gets that dual rail service, I think that's just going to be an absolute game changer. And the additional like million TEU capacity in Hutchinson Island.
Yeah.
Man, we are in a corridor that's in my mind just set to keep blowing up.
Any other takeaways as people go into the end of the year, data takeaways?
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say for sure, man. The volumes coming in pre December 15th tariffs, right? So you almost had another peak season.
Yeah.
So like it's not going to be like last year where we had this tremendous amount of volume, but it really it is somewhat like last year in the sense that throughout this whole year, really from like May till December 15th, there's been my perspective is there's volumes are artificially inflated.
Yeah.
So if that volume's here that would have moved, you know how Chinese New Year is, right? You have this huge increase in volume prior
Sure.
to that. It's in January, late January. I don't think U.S. importers, if I were importing, I wouldn't try to fool around with the American holidays and the Chinese holidays, right? Like you just know nothing's going to move, right? It's just the holiday season. People are on vacation. So that freight's already here. what's that leaving for the beginning of 2020 to the time contracts are normally signed, which is April to May, right?
Yeah.
Like it got pushed back to May 1st. You may even see contracts, ocean carriers try to push those to April 1st. Because if you think about it, there's not going to be much volume, man. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see if I'm right in that. But I would say that's what the data's telling me.
So what would you say to shippers who are entering contract season that, you're starting to strategize now, or right when they get back from the air? Because as you mentioned, it comes up in a couple of months. Are they going to have the upper hand when it comes, especially the ones with a lot of freight, the BCOs that have a lot of freight to push? Are they holding all the cards?
They're absolutely going to have the upper hand, but I think it's a time where we have to take a step back and think about the sustainability of the industry. I mean, is it in our interest to keep decreasing the amount of ocean carriers that are on the open market? I think, when you're looking at it from that perspective, like give them rates that are reasonable. Like I always said, like the best thing to do would be to give a truckload broker a fair shake, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and get the service that you deserve, get the allocation from a space standpoint. You just want to make sure your containers are going to move, man. And if you're treating that carrier well and you say, okay, look, I'll give you these rates, but when push comes to shove, make sure my stuff moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, you can get the best of both worlds, you could say. And overall decrease costs because you're not having to battle all of the inefficiencies that you've created as a result of beating rates down.
I mean, it's true. It's true, and it's a volume game when it comes to crunch time and everything's sitting on the port.
It is, man. It's always going to be a volume game, I think. So the biggest BCOs are gonna dominate the rate setting.
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else we should take away? I don't know. It's or should we pull this one into port?
We should pull it into port, man. Hit that horn.
All right, man. So if you want to reach out to me, continue the conversation, you can do so at Timothy Dooner on Twitter, or look me up on LinkedIn. That's DOONER. Henry, how do they find out more about you?
Likewise, LinkedIn, hbuyers@freightwaves.com. I'm here. If you want to see a demo of what we've got in Sonar, I'll be happy to show you. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, you can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are heard around the world, as well as on YouTube, all of FreightWaves social channels where you're watching this video right now. If you're watching or join along with us, we're doing this live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Not next week. We'll all be away, but we'll be back to resuming things. I don't know. And then New Year's is kind of weird, too. So,
man, I feel like we're missing something, man. we're missing a cohort
her.
here.
We
right?
are missing her. Yeah. Download the FreightWaves TV app. Also, if you want to start the new year fresh with a brand new career, that Sell It On closure happened on the trucking side, so it prompted us to start a new career board. It's not just FreightWaves jobs. It's all jobs with the industry. Go to freightwaves.careers. Your journey into tomorrow starts today.
Get a job.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's give a little ship horn.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Everybody have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. I'm still deciding if we're doing one before New Year's, but
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
It's going to be a good time.
It is.